Hi there, Scott from Wessex Blades. Welcome back. I had an interesting question posed to me, which I answered as a YouTube sort of like response. Um, but I thought it'd be fun, as it were, to explore that a little bit further. So rather than just as a comment, as a video. Um, if they made a grinder rather than me having to build all these extra little attachments on the side, what would it be and what would the cost be? Well, I'm guessing the cost would be about £2 grand. It'd be like clerics. Um, so I suppose in no particular order. Um, let's just run through features, and I'll do them, with this hypothetical sort of posed question. Um, rather than specific measurements, most of the time I'll just be saying bigger or smaller or shorter, that sort of idea. Um, so the average 2x72. Um, I'm very fortunate to have a handmade one from Barry, and this is it's a Wilmont clone. So it has three tooling posts. You can have a look in a minute. The other thing characteristic of a Wilmont is it hinges, so it flips from horizontal to vertical and back again. The way that this hinges is it hinges literally hinges. So I'm strong enough just to lift the whole thing up. There are makers now that do them on brackets where the path of the bolt is in sort of a quarter circle tooling milled out section that it's got, and I think pivots in the same sort of position as it would be horizontal. It literally just turns like that. It's a lot less weight to hoik back and forth. Plus you use less bench space because you can see that when that flips down, it fills up that space as well. So I suppose it takes up another 400 mil, 18 inches of your bench space. So the ability to flip um, is pretty much it's a standard requirement of knife making, because it gives you almost double the tasks within making a knife. Being able to lay it flat on that platen there and address the blade, that way on, and get a nice finish across the spine like that, and working on something this big as opposed to a work rest that's only a lot smaller. So yeah, the ability to flip, and once it's in its position, a big work rest. Whilst we're on in its as at the moment, I've had a break with some use. I've let it gone out for a quarter of an hour and come back, so it's all sort of settled down. But a bespoke hood that's built for the grinder that you can connect any extract pipe to would be useful. I use coffee cans or baked bean tins, just because there's nothing, everything will be a different way of making it. I haven't got around to it yet, there's too much else to worry about. But a dedicated hood that can go and clamp at various points, so that when you're working this way, it does sweep round. It could be a lot better. But rather than people having to make their own or buy an aftermarket hood, plenum or whatever for the extract system, something that's actually dedicated, because they already make the spark shields for some grinders. Whilst I can see this here, my idlers here and the tracking wheel are steel. I know you can make these out of sort of Delrin, I think they call it, sort of plasticky, so that's fine. But I know some make them out of alley. I don't know how long that lasts. Personally, I haven't replaced these yet. These are steel, so I would say steel. The tensioning on this one is really strong, but I suppose the new gas shocks are pretty much standard now, so maybe have a gas shot that you can replace. But I like that one because it's just monstrous. So a nice easy tensioning system when it comes to changing belts. When obviously it flips, this will be right back down there, and we'll have a look at the drive wheels, because the drive wheel on my motor is bigger than 50, and it gives the option of running bigger belts. Come to that in a week. Okay, so you can see there that the drive wheel is far bigger than the actual belt, as is my tracking wheel, which gives me the option at some point. I do actually have a bigger section already cut out. I'm trying to make this whole what can I say, interpretation of this grinder into something completely different, and the way that he made it, or he made it, it can take it. I would say the motor at the moment, with it in terms of power in kilowatts, you can get ones that are torquey and ploddy, or you can get ones that can run a bit faster. Speed's great if you're skanking off material, but we're limited to the power available to, the usual UK domestic supply. So you're sort of limited to 3 kilowatt ish out of a plug socket. So whatever power rating of the motor it'll be the maximum that you could possibly get out of a plug socket, if you can't get some way of running like a cooker or shower amount of power out to the garage. So if mine's 1500 2 kilowatt, I'd want a 3.5 4 kilowatt motor, because I can really slow this down, and if I push even harder, the Invitec will trip out. I'm just heavy handed. It's a chewer, this grinder, as opposed to a flyer. So I can push this thing and make it really really worried. I don't know about how motors perform when they're 2-pole over 4-pole. I know 2-poles are faster and less torque. Quite how the overheating works with that, I'm not an electrician. But my torquey motor plotter is great fun, but I can still give it some worries. Obviously, it's got to be variable speed, so it'll have a box of tricks like that, which will allow a 240 single phase power supply to get rejiggled and black magicked into a 3-phase supply for a 3-phase motor. It just makes it torquier. And the ability to go backwards, because sometimes if you're going to be using something like a 600 finishing belt, you don't want to be going down onto the edge on a blade. You want to be going up the other way, especially if you're doing a stropping effect like on a finishing belt or whatever. So the ability to run backwards. Plenty going on so far. The platen. This is something that I mentioned with the dragger the other day. You can see my platen there. Well, yeah. Now we can, as knife makers, been getting away with the short little platens or wood loris by sort of doing a handle section and then doing the blade section. Just having the platen ever so slightly proud of the top and bottom rollers. So as you're travelling up and down and figure of 8 in, you're not binging into an idler wheel, top or bottom, and then taking a scallop out of your either blade end or handle. So being able to use the little platen over a large blade, we're getting away with it. But because the platen is committed to a 2x72 belt, I'm looking at doing stuff bigger and wider. The 2x72 as a an expression of a grinder to use 2x72 belts, which are like de rigueur for makers to cut and splice, for people to set up, you know, bulk order belts pre-made. It's like the bread and butter is the 2x72. When you start going slightly differently, you got, obviously you're using more material for a bigger belt, so it makes it more expensive, but it's longer travel. And by the time it comes back to you, you've got more chance of running cooler. All right. So bigger is always better. You know, you already got the size of the machine. If it was running a 100mm belt, and you could convert it just by changing the platen to a 2x72 or a 3x72 or a 4x72. The drive wheel and the idler would just stay the same if the drive wheel and the idler was 75, for example. And you just flip between the two, and you could run 2 or 3 inch belts. That's my goal, because half my blades do not fit on a 2x72, and that's what I started out on. Those were my first blades I didn't fit, so I was using angle grinder discs and things like that. The grinder behind me that is made by Mr. Wellings, that when I had the original motor in and a tooling arm didn't just dump into the head of the motor, that could run 2x60, 2x72, 2x90, because the tooling arm was long enough. When it's right at the end, as it is now, not much sticking out, I'm running 50x15, 25. It's a budget belt. Okay, you can order lots of them, and for someone starting out and you ain't got much room on a workbench, and let's say you're in an 8x6 shed, you could just about get that thing up there and stand there. You're there. You know, on an end of the end of your shed, you're 8 foot long. There's your workbench, 6 foot across. You can do it. It'll fit. It's small. So 2x60 great. Or if you had a big garage or whatever, you can run 2x90. Stays cooler longer. Again, huge, great work rest. So it's not just a huge, great platen. Look at the size of that thing. You can imagine if you're trying to do a bigger blade in jig, or even freehanding it, if you're running it on a block and you're just using the work rest to stop it from disappearing down, and you're just literally pressing against it, you're running out of room as you run off the end of the world if your work rest isn't big enough. I also like having a work rest that's available, because I can put a piece of phenolic on. Where's my phenolic? Up there it is. So I've now turned my work rest with some phenolic. That's now where I do my bluey layout stuff for putting scribe lines on. So it's big, it's flat, it's open, it's a work area. Now it's back to being a work rest. It's just an opportunity. It's really, really flat, it's really, really stable, and for the sake of putting something resilient on it, like a piece of phenolic, in order to get your scribe lines done, you try to mess around with work rest that's only this big. It's like opportunity lost again. It's more, I'd say that's more the thing I'm always looking at, is it, yeah, great bit of kit, but if if it was this, if it was that, if it was something else. So let's try and go back through it. Big work rest, big platen, keeping the drive wheel and idler at 75. Whatever happens, if it's a 2x72, the drive wheel and the idler stays at 75. Just if it's way out of idler, it still stays on the idler. If it's way out of tracking, it still stays on the drive wheel. You know, why make a drive wheel 50mm? Big platen. Obviously carbide platen, I imagine, but most people can understand that you can. The knife makers around are more than able to put a piece of one in the in their kiln and come out with something hard. there's a skill set in there with knife makers. Oh yeah, making noise. That was it. Yeah. So we lot can come up with platens, actual to surface, but if the assembly behind it is small, we're restricted by it. Biggest motor we could possibly get off of for a UK supply, VFD, committed, efficient sort of positioning for an extraction and a local exhaust, because that's something I'm struggling with. So either a hood, a plastic hood, or a metal hood, plenum. Oh, the ability. You see that's flat on either work rest, being that it's in horizontal as it is now, or I flipped it over and I'm going vertical. An ability for this to go up and down. I've got the angly table for my Clark, and at some point over the last 5 years I've always determined I'm going to get a piece of 40mm square tubing and freaking weld the thing on the end of it, just so I can uncrank it and turn the alley table up and down, put a piece of, I don't know, hardwood on it or something, anything, and then you can do something that's not you put 45s on things, just it's done all over. So angle front tables would be very useful. The differing wheels in terms of contact wheels is not really a problem. There's so many kits, there's so many people who can make really good contact wheel sets of different sizes. It's not the end of the world that the grinder itself doesn't necessarily come with, oh, it's got to come with an 18, a 15, a 12, a 10, and that's not what I would be asking for, because it would just be assumed that everybody's makes, everybody's designs, everybody's the different tasks that they got, they'll all be so specific, whereas making it the way I'm putting forward here, if it was like this, it would be general purpose. If it was a bigger, powerful motor, you wouldn't necessarily use the electric if you were running it slower anyway. The fact that the platen's big, you could just put the whole blade on that someone's got instead of just the handle. So most people could put the whole knife on, rather than I want to put the whole knife on because I've got a bigger knife. Wider work rest. You've already got a machine that's this big, time the motors on it. Why is the work rest to get supplied with them that long? Another point to do with, if the platen is bigger, that means the machine generally would be shorter. So when I'm changing the belt, I'm just about big enough to reach over to where it locks, to press down where I'm doing the tension, because my ribs and guts is on the work rest already, so I can't get any closer. If the platen was taller, I'd have less, and you'd have more room in the garage because the machine will be squatter and taller. There's plenty of roof space. Why are these things always 3.5 foot long when it can be 2.5 foot long, if you understand the rationale? I think that's about running about here. The FD, variable speed, metal, contact wheels, or Del ring, they call it. Yeah, so I thought it was a fun idea. As I say, this is not so someone's going to come along and make one. This is just if there's a maker out there and he's struggling the same way that I'm at, and it's giving him an idea that he can make something. Oh yeah, bigger platen. I could. Yes, you can. It'd just be, don't make it first before you realise how much shorter it's going to be if your tooling arm's going to be too short to actually adjust. If that makes sense. Yeah, you make your platen longer, means that your tooling arm's got less scope, so you can't get it back to get your belt on to pull it out. But I dare say most grinders can cope with an extra 2 inches of platen, surely. Instead of, well, madam, 10 inches is better than 8, isn't it?